related, etc. I want to just really commend you as students of grade 10 and really just showing up, being online for your classes, participating in the various sessions, and getting ready to tackle the big bad CXC. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to open in prayer, and then we do a quick overview, and then I set you up for some success. So as it is in terms of the overview, our goal today is really, as it says, to have and host an SBA seminar and workshop. We're going to be doing some dissecting of the SBA, discussing the guidelines, how you would design a question, and most importantly, citation of your sources. How do you cite your sources? Give me a second, please. How you go ahead and cite your sources. So for that, I've invited a guest presenter to take us through. Now, I will return this screen later on in the presentation. I will show this screen later on. But for those who already got their little notebooks and pens, I'm gonna ask you to make a note of these dates. First, submission, and I want us to be mindful of some things, because some people, especially in dealing with the SBA, they talk a lot about drafts and first draft and second draft and all of these drafts, etc., etc. Now, I just want to caution you girls that we, as a history department, we don't, and based on the nature of the SBA, we can't necessarily do what some other subjects may call drafts. And so when you submit, it is the first submission of the SBA, and it is all the parts of the SBA that you will be submitting. That's the first submission will be the 27th of September. The second submission, so the teachers will mark, give you feedback, return to you, and you will submit again, or submit secondly the corrections, etc., on December 3. And then finally, after you take that home and go over the Christmas break and into the new year, make some final corrections. You will complete and submit your final, complete your submit, sorry, your completed SBA on the 28th of February, God's willing, 2022. So please note, girls, that there is no such thing as first draft, second draft, third draft, fourth draft, fifth draft. No, first submission. And so we take our time to go through all of the SBA today, and we submit when we return, God's willing, at the end of September, first week of December, and then at the end of February. Before I get into the introduction of the guest speaker, I'm just gonna ask you to give me 2 minutes, and then we get going. I'll leave this up on screen so you can make a note of the dates. All right, perfect. Thank you so much, ladies, for reaching out to your friends. I'm seeing quite a bit of them coming on now, and for that, we are grateful. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we want to give you thanks for today. Lord, we thank you for all the good things that you have given to us. Lord, you have spared us from the worst of Elsa, and we are eternally grateful to you. Lord, we thank you for your mercies shown, and we ask, God, that we don't take it for granted, your protection, your favor, your love for us, that we don't take it for granted. Lord, as we go into this SBA workshop and seminar, I ask that you will continue to be with us and give us good success. We give you thanks in no other name but Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So for those ladies who are just getting the chance to join, up on screen, you're going to see some important dates that I'm going to ask you to note. These dates are the dates that you will be using to guide you as you are, you know, guide you as you get into this SBA process. Now, for the SBA, as I was sharing earlier, there will not be drafts. You will make a first submission, a second submission, and then your completed SBA for grading. I see my guest presenter is on and ready. I ask you to get a little notebook, a little pencil, something that you can use to write so that you can capture as much of the discussion as possible. We are also recording the session for those who are unable to join, etc., so that they can, and also for your benefit, that you will be able to look back at this session and of course follow the discussion as we go through. So this morning we have with us Mrs. Brown Winter, head of department at the Queen's School. She has been at the Queen's School for the last, what seems like almost 15 years, 13, 14, 15 years. She comes to us with a wealth of knowledge on the Caribbean History SBA, and we will now hand over to Mrs. Brown Winter as she takes us through the paces and gets us into that one readiness for our SBA. Ladies, use the emojis, use the reactions, and make her welcome for me, please. Mrs. Brown Winter.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Brown Chambers, for such a warm welcome. Welcome, everyone, and good morning. So today we are going to be talking about the Caribbean History SBA, school-based assessment. And of course, once you are doing Caribbean history or any subject at fourth, fifth form, an SBA is really something that is required of you. So we're going to get into it. I am going to share my screen. I don't know if I have that privilege, Mrs. Brown Chambers, to share screen. Do I? Mrs. Brown Chambers, are you there?
Yes, miss.
I was asking if I have the privilege of sharing my screen.
All right, give me a second, please.
So we just want to get into it. I don't want you girls to be nervous. I am able to?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want you girls to be nervous about the SBA at all. There's nothing to be nervous about. I mean, history is such a beautiful subject area, and it allows you so much wealth of information and knowledge, and the skills that you will be left with is just beautiful. And it will basically pave the way for the type of individual that you'd become. And I love to tell my girls that at the Queen's School. So I'm going to see how best I can share my screen, and then we get into the process. Can you let me know if you are seeing my screen? You can just use your emojis or just open your mics and just let me know if you're seeing my screen.
I'm seeing the screen.
Okay, so that's one person. And I assume that others are seeing the screen. All right, so let's get into it. All right. All right, so what is all right, what is the Caribbean History SBA about? Now, the SBA, ladies, is basically a requirement from the Caribbean Examination Council once you're studying Caribbean history. And as I said earlier, it's really any subject at all that you would have started doing at fourth form, because of course you know that fourth form is really the beginning of the CSEC syllabus. So as an SBA really is the SBA sorry, it's really a requirement that comes out of the Caribbean Council to help the students with let's say a part of their grade, right? Now, the main purpose of the SBA is to assist students in acquiring knowledge, skills, and attitudes critical to the subject area. And, you know, once you start doing history, ladies, we like to tell the girls that you go into the mind of the historian. And you know, you have to have, and as we go through, you will see, you have to go through collecting evidence, historical evidence, and these are some of the skill set that you're going to be getting and honing by the time you're finished with your SBA. The attitude in terms of how you look at the subject area, how you look at other subject areas from here on will also will be an asset in doing your history SBA. And of course, ladies, the wealth of knowledge that you're going to get. And this wealth of knowledge is going to separate you ladies from those who have the information and those who don't have. So it's very, very important that you pay close attention to what you're doing while you're doing your SBA. Now, the SBA is a very integral part of the student's assessment, and every student who enters as a candidate must submit a research project. So I don't want you to feel, ladies, that, okay, we don't have to submit our SBA project and we can still pass or do well in the exam. That won't work, and it's not possible, right? You must, and I emphasize must, you must submit your SBA. Must, right? And of course, sometimes the girls, they tend to, or students generally, they tend to have challenges when they are writing their SBAs, right? For whatever reason, but you cannot give up. It is something that you have to push and do. And one of the things, as you notice at the end of this slide, is that the research project represents 21% of your total marks for CSEC. Now, 21 marks, I don't know what your thoughts are. It could seem like a large percent or it could seem like a small percent. However you see the 21%, ladies, this is just a fragment, a piece of your grade, right? So what this means is that you want to go in with top score, right? And you want to write a very good SBA. Right? Once you do that, you are good. But we don't want you to settle on thinking that getting a good SBA grade is enough to do well in the exam. Because remember, at the end of the day, we want you ladies, and I'm sure the teachers at the St. Andrew High School, they want you to get your ones and your twos, and preferably ones. And of course, We're not going to shy on the threes, but that we don't want that to be the focus. The focus is really on the ones and twos and students getting distinctions, you know, etc. So the 21%, as I said, however you're seeing it, ladies, you want to make sure that you get a good grade going in the exam. And I'm going to just say this as caution to you. I remember a couple years ago, a student of mine, she did very well on her SBA. But what she did, she left it to the SBA, and that's just my assessment. She left it to the SBA, and in leaving it to the SBA, she failed the exam. So what did that mean? It meant that she did not put in the other 79% of what would have been required of her for the written part of the exam. And I want you ladies, and even though this is a SBA workshop slash seminar, I really want you to pay attention not only to your SBA, but also to the written part of the exam, because doing well in the SBA is one aspect, but in order to get those distinctions, those grade ones and twos, you really, really want to do well. So with that being said, in terms of what the SBA is about, let's get into it. So our focus for the workshop would be on the rationale, the introduction, the body, citation. Now, I was told that I don't need to go into the questions or anything like that, because the history department at the St. Andrew High School would have provided you girls with that information. And so we're just gonna get into the rationale. Now,
All right, before you go ahead, Mrs. Brown Winter, just
yes,
wanted to cement the point that you just made about the questions. Now,
okay,
ladies, as the history department, there are several things that we would have recognized over the last couple of years, especially in terms of selecting a topic and how do I fix the topic, etc. So we have essentially taken somewhat of the hassle of that out of it for you. And so before the end of this meeting, you will have a copy of a question sheet, bank of questions that you can select from based on our themes that we would cover. And then you just choose one question from there. So as Mrs. Brown Winter goes into the rationale, etc., just go ahead, ladies, as I put in the chat and as I said before, make notes of the important things that she will be discussing. Thanks, Mrs. Winter.
all right. So what is the rationale? Now, a lot of persons, when you think about the rationale, and you might not know because this is new to you, it's basically why you're doing the topic. And a lot of persons in the past that I've come across, you know, the students, they tend to say, oh, miss, because I like the topic or I like the subject area, and, you know, I like the theme. And nothing is wrong with that, but that's not what we want you to write. So let's look at the screen. So what is the rationale? This is a statement that contains objectives, it should be objective, sorry, of the research and what the researcher intends to accomplish by the end of the research. The rationale stems from the research question or statement and acts as a framework for the research. I'm going to repeat that. The rationale stems from the research question or statement and acts as a framework for the research. This means that the essay should be written with the rationale / objective in mind, right? So we're going to look at some examples or an example so you have an idea of how to move on. And ladies, feel free to stop me if you have a question based on the different topics that we'll be looking at. All right, so I've put in here a possible research question, the area of research, and then we'll move into it. So the area of research will be resistance and revolt. And I tend to choose that topic because the students tend to gravitate to resistance and revolt, the indigenous peoples and the Europeans. Those themes, they tend to gravitate. But today I chose resistance and revolt. So a possible research question that we'll be looking at is this: to what extent can it be proven that the Haitian Revolution of 1791 did more harm than good for the newly independent state of Haiti? Right? So what do you think, ladies, a possible rationale would look like for this research question? Anybody wants to try before I get into it? Even one. Just even one objective. Anybody wants to try? No?
Miss?
Yes?
Miss, to outline the effects of the Haitian Revolution on Haiti.
All right, that is Joanna. Nice, nice objective, Joanna. So that could be a possible objective that we would use in the rationale. So I'll go to my page and we'll see if I have anything that Joanna would have put up. All right, I hope you can see it. So for such a question, you would definitely look at the effects. I have consequences, right? Now I have 3, and look at what I have. I have described the course of the 1791 Haitian Revolution. Then I say state the consequences of the revolution. And then I have assessed, because if we are to go back to the question, let me go back to the question. It says, to what extent can it be proven, right? So we have to set the objective in such a way that we are getting information, that our readers will have the information, ladies, but that we can also prove whether or not the revolution did more harm than good. So we want to state the consequences, and then now, after we've stated the consequences, ladies, we want to assess the consequences. And then we want to determine if if it did more harm than good. Now, when we assess something, we're going to go through, we're going to look at all the pros and the cons, the advantages, the disadvantages, everything that would have happened, consequence, effects. We're going to look at it. And then now from there, we should be able to make a judgment. Did it do more harm than good? So in the rationale, we want to have objectives. And if you look at the bottom of those 3 objectives, it says, when writing the rationale, always use, I should put the objectives. In writing the objectives in the rationale, always use a verb, always. And this will guide you on how you answer your question, right? And we always speak in the 3rd person. The researcher will describe the course, state the consequence, assess the consequences, and determine if there was more harm than good. Have I lost anyone so far? Are we following? Yes, no, maybe so?
Yes, miss.
Am I going too fast?
Excuse me, miss.
Yes.
Miss, this is Ashley. I have a question. Could you give
Sure.
I'm not sure what you mean by always use a verb. Can you give an example?
All right. So if you notice, if you're looking at my screen, you'll notice that the words that are underlined, those are the verb. So the verb tells you what you are doing. Does that make sense, Ashley?
Yes, miss, thank you.
Right. So the verb, so you're going to describe the course of the revolution. When we said describe the course, Ashley, do you understand what I mean by describe the course?
Yes, miss.
Okay. And then when we state the consequences, we're going to highlight, state, tell what the consequences would have been. And as I said before, we're going to assess. And when we assess, we are going to talk about the pros and cons, and then make, we're going to look at the pros and cons of the consequence, and then we determine from the information that we gathered whether or not it did more harm than good. Any other questions? All right, so I'll move on. All right, so when you're looking at the rationale, ladies, you want to have at least 3 objectives, right? At least 3 objectives, but no more than 4, right? Because depending on the research topic that you're doing and what you want to find out, you can go up to 4, but you don't want to go over 4, right? It's not a university paper, right? And word count, we have to bear in mind, word count. It's very important that we pay attention to the word count, right? It says, in addition to the objective, the students should indicate how the research paper will benefit the researcher, future researcher, and others. Now, when I have my students at the Queen School, I like to tell them, before you give me the objectives, give me about a paragraph, no more than 5 lines, telling me why you chose it. And for me, in asking my students to do that, what I want them to do is not to tell me because they like the theme or anything. I want historical information coming. So if they chose, for example, the Haitian Revolution, right, under the theme resistance and revolt, I want to hear something. This topic was chosen because of its historical nature, being the first independent slave colony or former slave colony in the Western Hemisphere, you know, to receive freedom, something like that. And then now, as a result, the researcher will, so something like that. So I usually ask them to start with a paragraph, like a 5 line. Some of them will go over the 5 lines, but it's not damaging at all. And then they move into the objectives. And then after that now, some of them will tell me the benefits, not more than 2, 3 lines, what the benefits will be to the researcher, those who will read it thereafter, and anybody else who comes across when they're doing the study and when they're looking at the rationale. All right. All right, so let's move into the introduction. Let's move into the introduction. So this is the beginning of the paper, right? And when you're looking at the introduction, ladies, there are things that you must put in there. So you must talk about the background. You must have a thesis statement, and you must highlight the main arguments you intend to discuss. Must do this. These 3 things must be in it. And we're going to look at these 3 things a little bit more intent. So the background, what is the background? Now, if for whatever topic you're doing, if you are looking at if you're looking at Caribbean economy and slavery, if you're looking at indigenous peoples and the Europeans, any topic at all, you want to have a background. So when you provide the background, these are some of the things that you're going to put in the background, the setting, right? The setting is the location. You're looking at the location. You're looking at the climate/time. What was happening there? Sorry, climate time, and you're looking at the atmosphere. What was happening during the time, right? So suppose you want to look at the transatlantic trade, or the slave trade, right? And if your research question is focused around the slave trade, you need to provide the background information telling the reader what was happening, right? So the location would be Africa, West Africa. And the location would also be in the Caribbean, because you were saying that they would be taking them to the Caribbean, right? Or the Americas. But the main location would be West Africa, because that is where they would have sourced, the Europeans would have sourced the Africans to come to the Caribbean and work. The climate or the time, so you're looking at 18th century, 17th century, 16th century, whatever the time, you need to be talking about the time. And the atmosphere, what was happening at the time, right? So if we're looking at the slave trade, what would have been happening in the Caribbean space or in the Americas, the West Indies, why the slave trade was something considered of importance. So we would have to talk about the sugar revolution, right? Now, in talking about the sugar revolution, you're not going to go in detail to tell me to talk and let the introduction, sorry, you're gonna go in detail, but not too much, right? So you're gonna tell me that it came as a result of the competition that they were having with the tobacco, with Virginia tobacco, etc. Those little things you're gonna put in there, right? And that the Europeans, they couldn't manage to work because the task was so difficult for them. They couldn't manage the climate, etc. And how you gonna write it, ladies? You're gonna write it in such a way where you're not going too much in detail, but when your teacher reads it, when you read it, when whomever reads it, they see that you understand how to take your information and how you place it in the paper, right? So you need to give that background, that overview, so that we know why you're gonna go back now to talk about the slave trade. Excuse me. It's not enough to just write the introduction and just talk about the slave trade, because really the information, the background really paves the way, and it provides the reader with an understanding of where your information is coming from and the direction in which you intend to go, right? And as you notice at the end of the page, it says the background information provides the reader with an overview of the research focus, right? Now, you must have a thesis statement, and a thesis statement is very, very important. Your introduction must have a thesis statement, and it's really, ladies, the position that you are taking based on the position. So if we were to go back to the research question that I had earlier, right? What could be a possible thesis statement? Does anyone want to try? What would be a possible thesis statement? Let me see if I can go back. I don't know how to. Okay. Let's see. Escape. All right. So let me just go back to the question that we had. All right, let's look at that research question. Could anyone tell me a possible thesis statement that you would use or you think you could use? Anyone at all? Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just looking for something so that you can get into the frame of mind once you start your process. No takers?
Miss,
Yes, Allison.
this is what I think. Could it be to the examination of like the course and the consequences of the Haitian Revolution of 1791? We will make, or something like, we will prove if the revolution did more harm than good. something like that.
All right, so remember now, the thesis statement is a position. Thank you, Ashley. The thesis statement is the position that you are taking. So you want to prove that the Haitian Revolution of 1791 did more harm than good. So a thesis statement could be, it is without a doubt, just for example, it is without a doubt that the Haitian Revolution did more harm than good because, and with your thesis statement, you want to have your supporting points that you are going to use to make that position or to take that position. So let me just go back. So the thesis statement is not a fact. You're making a strong claim and you can have subpoints to support what you will discuss, right? So if I say it is without a doubt that the 1791 revolution, Haitian Revolution, did more harm than good, I need to now show some subpoints to support why I have taken that position. Understand? Just open.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, the main arguments. The main arguments, you're simply looking at how you will defend the position that you have taken based on the thesis statement that you have presented, right? And really and truly, ladies, your main arguments can come from the objectives that you have posted in the rationale. All right, so the main argument is simply looking at how you will defend the position you've taken with the thesis statement presented, right? And so those objectives that you would have had or written in the rationale can be used as the main arguments or the main points that you will use to discuss the points that you want in the actual body of your paper, right? So the introduction, we're not finished. So those are the main things you want to ensure that you have in the introduction. Now, with the introduction, ladies, you don't want to forget your key terms. You must define your key concepts, terms that are associated with your research. Very important, right? Write in paragraphs. Too often, and I'm sure your teachers, you know, and I think this is a general problem that we have right across the board with students, some students that is, that you don't write in paragraphs, and it is very important that you write in paragraphs. Reference and cite your sources, and you want to have at least two, right? You want to have at least two sources in the introduction. And of course, these sources are historical sources, right? Now, if you take, so say for instance, you would have taken the information from a dictionary or an encyclopedia, that source can also be used as well, right? But you really want to have some nice sources from your history textbooks, and you want to use these, start using them from the introduction, ladies, right? Too often, well, on my end, what I see is that many times what happens is that the students, they don't source their information, so they just write. And so when you say to them, where did you get this information from, or I'm not seeing your source, they're like, miss, I didn't know that I ought to have source or put the information from the book or the book information in the introduction. You want to do that, right? And we're going to talk more about that. And it's really not the book information so much, more like the author, the historian's information, right? The introduction should have a closing and it should have a conclusion, right? Now, it's not anything big. It's a couple lines just closing out because you're moving into the discussion now where the main arguments will be discussed. You're going to tear those arguments apart, find the information, and you're going to put them in. So the introduction, you need to have a closing for the introduction. Now, the introduction, ladies, it's not long. The introduction really is a page and a half in length. And I guess it really does depend on how you write as well, the type of writer that you are. If you give your teacher a half page, I'm sure she's going to send you back with it. So don't send your teacher any half page introduction. You want a full page and a half, and that will take into consideration everything that we've discussed for the introduction, the background info. It will include your thesis. It will include the main points that you intend to discuss and your closing, right? As well as the key terms that you will define to bring it together, right? And try not to let your introduction be choppy. Right throughout your paper, ladies, you want a flow and ease of information. You don't want a teacher to be stressed out. You don't want a teacher to stop and say, oh my God, I can't be bothered, right? I'm not understanding. And it will mark up. But nothing is wrong with the teacher marking up your paper, ladies. Nothing is wrong. The markup is not something bad. It's really a guide for you and on how you can fix it. But you want to have ease of information and you want to have flow. And even though I don't have it here, I have it further down. What you want to have or use in your introduction as well is the transition words. So in addition, however, you want to be using these so that the flow in your information can be read easily. All right, and so that really is the introduction. Moving on. So we want to look at the body. Now, we really, that I've noticed over the years, that CXC really doesn't ask for subtitles, right? There's no need for subtitles. And so the body is really what we call the extended introduction, right? Now, this ought to start on a separate and a new page. It's not to be below the introduction, but it ought to be on a new page, right? And this is where the discussion, the main arguments will begin. Now, if you look at what I have for the second point, it says that the extended body or the introduction should be argumentative. Ladies, you are arguing your point, your research question, it ought to be researchable. And as I said, we don't need to go into that because as Mrs. Brown Chambers would have highlighted to you before, that you are given your research questions. And so when your teachers came together and they compiled those questions according to the themes, they would have made sure that, they would have made sure that the questions are set in such a way where they are researchable and where you can bring in your arguments to prove and bring across your point, right? Now, the use of historical statements are very important, and each point or statement should begin with a historical statement discussed in a paragraph or two and must be supported with historical evidence and referenced. No, that seems like a mouthful. It really isn't. When you start with your, I hope I'm correct in saying this, it would appear to be a topic sentence or appear in that way. So when we say that it must start or begin with a historical statement, it's almost like a topic sentence, right? And then now, whatever the arguments, ladies, that you will discuss, you're going to discuss, and you must bring in now the historical evidence to support the claim. I had an example, and I don't think I have it loaded. Um, Mrs. Brown Chambers, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I could stop sharing just for a minute.
Uh-huh.
If you could bring up, um, I'm sorry, I didn't give you a heads up before on this one, but it's really looking at the research question, which would have the title would be Caribbean History SBA Writing that Guidelines. And so there is an example on that presentation or information that you would have that I could share with the girls just a minute. So if you have it, I could stop showing.
Wait, that's the one that has the letter, has the, that's the SBA guideline, sorry?
Yes, it has Caribbean History SBA Writing Guidelines.
Okay, wait, let me find it.
So I could stop sharing and then you could just show that little part for me so that the girls have an idea.
All right, trying to find the one that you asked for. Coming up. This one?
Right. So at the bottom of that screen, right there.
Here?
Yes. So it's a little blur. Okay, beautiful. So ladies, if you look at the bottom, so the research question is the extent to which it is fair to say that the transatlantic slave trade of West Africans in the 17th and 18th century was solely for economic development of the British. So that is a nice research question, ladies. But now, if you look now at the bottom, it is giving how to put in the historical statements, the evidence, etc. So it reads, the transatlantic slave trade and the production of sugar facilitated the Industrial Revolution in Britain and allowed Britain to become a leading world power. That, my friends, is a historical statement. That is a historical statement. Then it goes on. Industrial plants were also built to refine the imported raw sugar. And it is coming from now a professor who would have done some research or who would have gathered some data, evidence to support. So it says now, Professor Pittman has estimated that in 1775, the British West Indies plantation represented a valuation of 50 million sterling, and the sugar planters themselves put the figure at 70 million. And that there is the supporting evidence, ladies, for the historical statement. So we wanted to see all of this coming out, ladies, in your extended introduction, or for the lack of a better term for us here, the body, right? And then it goes on to say, within a span of just 3 years, the sugar industry which made use of the Africans, was able to exponentially increase Britain's profit by 20 million sterling. So you put the information now in a historical context, and then again, it goes on to make further supporting evidence coming from the professor who, as I said before, would have done some research to be able to bring it like that. So when you're writing, thanks, Mrs. Brown Chambers. Oh, so I have to go back to my screen. Okay. So when you're writing, ladies, you want to ensure that you have your historical statements. You want to make sure that you have your historical evidence, and you want to make sure that it's referenced. And we're going to touch on the referencing further down, right? We're going to touch on it later down. So again, it is argumentative. You don't want to just write it. And for a lack of a better use of term or discrimination, you don't want it blasé. You don't want it to be, you don't want your research paper to be boring, to be so bland. You want, when your teachers are reading it, they feel that they have done a good job in explaining to you, in showing you X point, how to present the information that you have read and are reading. And so you know how to present your information in a credible way and creative way. All right, so let me see if I hope I didn't skip a page. Sorry. I don't know what happened a while ago. Let me go again. All right, so where do you find your historical evidence? Now, gathering historical evidence for the introduction and the body is very important, ladies. Very, very important. Now, your historical evidence comes from two likely sources. You'll get them from your primary source, or you'll get them from your secondary source. Very, very important. Now, it is very important, critical, that you try your best, ladies, to get some primary sources. Very important. Now, the primary sources, what are these? These are first-hand evidence, and they come from diaries, letters, official records, even pictures can be seen as first-hand evidence and primary source. Now, you can get these from the museum, archives, and some libraries, not all libraries. So if I'm not mistaken, the National Library, located downtown Kingston, would have some first-hand evidence or primary sources for you. I think though that it would be, I don't know if they have it on all the themes though, don't quote me, but you can get it depending on the topic that you're doing. If you were to do anything on US in the Caribbean, you could always try to go to the US Embassy, and they also have a library, and you can also go there. You would have to set up an interview with the librarian there. I don't remember what the contact is, but you could set up interviews at an interview with the librarian, or an appointment rather with the librarian, and she should be able to guide you, right? So we have diaries. Now, there is the diary of Thomas Thistlewood, and that is located at the University of the West Indies main library. And again, it depends on the topic that you want to do. And that book gives first-hand information, account of the relationships that this planter, Thomas Thistlewood, had with his female slaves, ladies. And there are some explicit information in it, but it is a first-hand account that is very important, ladies, and it is there, right? And so if you were looking at for example, slave relations on the plantation, the diary of Thomas Thistlewood would have been a very good primary source to collect and put, document in your SBA. Now, the secondary sources are widely used and available at your fingertips. Your textbooks, the books, encyclopedia, newspapers. And I must add, ladies, that newspapers can also be primary source, because if you find the newspaper article with the correct, with the date and everything in it, it can be used as a primary source. Now, you will find primary sources also, ladies, in secondary source, because this is what the historians do. They would have gathered their information, and they, depending on what they have found and how they retrieved the information, they would more likely to put it in the textbooks. So ladies, technically we don't have any excuse. Now, I don't have anything here on the internet, but it is not to say, ladies, that you can't gather information from the internet. No, I want to caution you, and I do believe that the girls at the St. Andrew High School, 4 girls, or the St. Andrew, am I calling it correctly?
Close, Miss, close. St. Andrew.
The St. Andrew High School for girls. I do believe that you girls are very bright and intelligent, and so we know that putting Google is not a website, it's a search engine. And we know that we don't take our information just from anywhere off the World Wide Net. We know that we need to find credible sources. So you can take it from something that has an edu at the end. So nothing is wrong with going online, ladies, and using the information from a website, but we want to ensure that the information that we are getting is from the edu website. I am very skeptical about Wikipedia, and I do believe that you should too, because anybody can add on Wikipedia, and sometimes the information there is not credible. So you want to be careful how you select your historical information. And you'll have persons who would have done some studies on the topics. You can get your information from JIS, their online website. I think they have some of their information, their library information is online. So you have the information, ladies, at your fingertip, but you want to be extremely careful on how you retrieve, what it is you're retrieving, and what you are putting in your SBA. Because remember now, ladies, you want to get marks for collection of data, right? And how you're presenting the information.
All right. Before you go on, Mrs. Winter, one of the things that St. Andrew High has done for the students over the last couple of years is pay for or access to EBSCO. EBSCO is
Yes.
an online journal,
Yes,
online
have it
magazine,
too, I
online
believe.
everything. It allows you ladies to put in the search engine the topics or keywords, and then you would find journal articles, books, magazines,
Right.
newspapers that can
Beautiful.
be used to assist you in terms of your SBA. So we will make sure that you have the username and password to log in, so that as you start, zero in on your topic, you will know now that you will now need to go and look for your sources. So we will share with you that username and password so that you can find the credible, the good stuff to help you with the research.
And I'm so happy that you would have said that, Mrs. Brown Chambers, because we have that too at the Queen School. So the students have access to that online catalog of resources that they can go. So they shouldn't be saying, oh, I can't get to the library, I don't know how to get this information. Ladies, you literally are living in a digital timeline, and so you have these information, the sources at your fingertip, and you just want to be you just want to just enjoy going through the sources, because ladies, this is one of the best subjects that you'll ever do. I'm sorry, have to sell the subject area. And you're fortunate, ladies, that you all get to do history, right? And it's just one of those subject areas that keep you informed, keep you in the know. When you know about your past and you can make reference from it and, you know, apply it to your future and see how, you know, it is just a very warm and beautiful feeling. The words are just slipping me today, but it's really good. Now, just like the introduction, ladies, the body needs, more than anywhere else, needs to have a conclusion. Now, the conclusion, now teachers, their preference varies. You can have the conclusion following from the discussion that you would have at the top. But you can also have the conclusion on a separate page and you can label it conclusion. And as I say, the teachers vary because some of them, they would prefer to just have it run on and see it at the end. And some persons want to see the conclusion on a separate page with the info. Now, once you have completed discussing your main arguments in support of your thesis, your position, you need to come to a conclusion. And the conclusion is usually 1 or 2 paragraphs providing a summary, right? Or pulling your arguments together based on the research objectives from the rationale or in the rationale. Now, caution you ladies, no new arguments, no new points should be added at all. The conclusion, as it says, it's a closing. You're not putting anything new, no way. It is a closing. So we are closing out everything and we are going to now we are going to now determine whether or not the 1791 Haitian Revolution did more harm than good. So when you look at all of the pointers, when you would have look at the consequences, and ladies, I should have brought this up earlier, the consequences, you can now break up your consequences. You can look at the social, economic, political. And when you do that, ladies, you are best able or better able to now draw your conclusion to say, okay, we can see where there was a more damaging effect in the economic and the political effect, not necessarily the social. And so you can say, because the question says to what extent. So for your conclusion, ladies, you now want to say that to a large extent, because if we're saying that we saw more damages or harm in the economic and political, we want to say the Haitian Revolution to a large, the 1791 revolution did more harm than good, right? So we're saying to a large extent, it did more harm than good. Suppose when you did the research and based on your analysis, your interpretation, you didn't see where it did more harm than good. You would now have to take the standpoint that to a less extent or to a small extent, it did more harm than good. You understand? You do not draw conclusions that are not supported by historical evidence. Ladies, please, I want to emphasize this point so much. Do not draw conclusions that are not supported by historical evidence. Very, very important that you understand this. So whatever information you have in your body, whatever arguments you would have discussed and placed in the body, in your extended introduction, this is what you're going to use now to draw your conclusion. No new points. Emphasis, no new points. There is something else that I want to discuss very quickly. Let me see if I can find it. Can't find it. I can't find it, ladies, but if I find it, I'll get back to it. So you, again, no new points, no new arguments should be added to your conclusion, and we do not draw a conclusion on what we have not supported in the extended introduction, right? Now, the body. So this is just the wrap up of the body, girls. Of course, as I made mention earlier for the introduction, we want to use transitional words or phrase in addition, therefore, however, and really and truly, it really does allow for a flow or ease when you're making the transition to another point, etc. Please, please use paragraphs. Use your full stops. Look at your spelling. Look at your sentence structure. Look at the grammar. Look at everything. Right, ladies? Please organize your point. Now, if the first point that you're looking at, you're going to, coming from the research question that we had, that I had placed before, are you looking at the course of the revolution? That is where you're starting your discussion from. You can't go to the consequence, ladies, and then come back to the course. Please don't do that. You're going to give your teachers heartache, and they're going to take long to mark it, and you don't want that, right? So organize your points so that there's a flow and ease of information. Pay attention to writing, how you write. When you write in past tense, except when you're quoting from a primary source, right? Very important. So we use transitional words or phrase. We're writing paragraphs. We're going to use paragraphs. Organize your points. Your arguments should flow and they should connect. You want your points to connect as well. Pay attention to your grammar, spelling, sentence structure. Put your full stop where they ought to be, your colons, your semicolons, commas, etc. It's needed. And you write in the past tense unless you are quoting from a primary source. Any question for the body? Are we all following, ladies? Yes, no? Are we
Yes,
all
miss.
following? All
Yes,
right, thank you. All right, so this is one of the hard parts that we want to ensure, ladies, that you pay attention to. Now, the citations and the references. Now, the citations are references made within the body of the text and must be given when you write facts and statistics, quotations, and somebody else's ideas and opinions. Now, citations are compulsory. You can't do this SBA. You can't write a Caribbean history SBA without making your citations. And why do we cite? We cite to prevent plagiarism. That's taking somebody's work and not identifying or giving credit to the person's work. And you want to give the research paper its credibility, right? You want your research paper to have some credit so that when persons read it, they know, okay, that this paper is a well-researched paper. The person would have taken her information from different places, right? And the information is useful, right? You didn't make up anything. You didn't write as if the information belonged to you, right? You would have taken it from credible sources. Now, for Caribbean history, we use the Modern Language Association, which is the MLA system, to cite our source. Now, this can be very tricky at times, but if you pay attention, you will get it. And your computer or your laptop, the Word document, and I believe Google Docs has it at the top of the screen, so you can input your references in it, and you have to make sure that you're using the MLA. We do not use APA for our Caribbean history SBA at all. Now, students can use in-text citation, they can use footnotes, and they can use endnotes. It should be in-text citation, not in-text. In-text citation, right? Now, so we're gonna get into these, and we'll make it, I'm gonna try to make it as simple as possible for you. So in-text citation, what is it? So the in-text citation is a reference to a source that is found within the text of a paper, right? It tells the reader that an idea, a quote, or a paraphrase originated from this particular source. Now, the in-text citation can be displayed in two ways. You have it narratively, and you can put it as a parenthetical citation. No, they are similar, but they are it's different though. There's a slight difference for the two, right? Let me just go in. So I hope you can see this, and I hope it is clear for you. So the narrative of the in-text the narrative example of the in-text citation is when you put it in quotations, and not just quotation. If it's a large body of info that you're gonna take from a textbook or an article, whatever it is, you are going to do the indenting, and you're going to put in italics, right? And at the end of that, you're going to put just the number. Now, the number represents the page number from the book, the article, or wherever you would have taken it from. If it's a situation where you, all right, let me back up a little. For the narrative, as you look at the screen, you would put the name of the person. So it says King states that, and the quotation would be there. But it really, if it's a small quotation, it doesn't need to be in italics or be indented. However, if it's a large body of info, you're gonna indent and you're gonna put in italics. Close it with your quotation marks, and at the end of that, now you're gonna put in bracket the number, page number. So you don't want to put PG, you don't want to put P dot or anything like that. That's not what you're gonna do. If it's 11, as you see on the screen, that's what you're gonna put. If it's 21, you're gonna put that. If it's 22, you're just gonna put 22 in it, right? Now, if it's the parenthetical example, you will make your little statement and then you just start quoting. And then at the end of that quotation, you're gonna put Brown Chambers 12, comma 12, right? And you close it. This doesn't have the comma. Some persons don't put the comma, some put the comma, but you put comma 12, or you don't put it. And what it indicates that this was taken from Brown Chambers page 12. It is very important, ladies, that you use the in-text citation in your research paper, because what it shows the teacher, it shows the reader that you are supporting, you have historical evidence, and the information is being supported, sorry, right? Have I lost anyone with the narrative and the parenthetical in-text citation?
Yes, miss. Can you go over it, please?
You want me to go over it? All right. So let me see if I can just go back to, because we're almost finished. All right. So in-text citation. The in-text citation is, so remember earlier when I was showing you, when I asked Mrs. Brown Chambers to just show you that the on-screen information with the historical statement and the historical evidence, etc. Now, if I'm not sure, Mrs. Brown Chambers, could you bring up back that screen for me?
Sure. Here we go.
Right. Okay, so let me see if I'm at, all right, so here, same, that's fine. So here you have Professor Pittman has estimated that that would be a parenthetical in-text citation, right? It can, no, it would be, sorry, it would be a narrative. Sorry, it would be a narrative, right? But the parenthetical one would be where he would have just started quoting, and then at the end of it now, you would have seen Pittman, comma, or Pittman 10, right? So that is what the in-text citation is like. So just like how you see this here, this would be a form of citation. It could also, this, don't be confused, it can also be used as a footnote reference as well. And it can also be used as an endnote citation. For this here, we have it as a footnote citation, right? But the the in-text citation is where you would say, for example, Brown Winter noted that, and then I would give all of the little information, and I would put that in, I would indent that, and I would put that in italics, and that would be the that would be your in-text. But if we were to look at now, what we have on the screen is the footnote. Sorry, what we have is the footnote. So at the end of that little citation there, you notice it's in italics, and nothing is wrong with that. It can also, you would put the number, you put the cursor there and press footnote, and if it's the first footnote that you're putting, it would be aligned, it would come up beside there. So beside it, sorry. So I don't want to confuse you at all. I'm trying to do it as simple and as easy as possible, and I hope I was successful in doing that. So the in-text citation, I'll soon put up at my screen, the in-text citation is really just making reference to an opinion, an argument, a point that was made from somebody. It's not your work. It's not your word either. You can paraphrase something and you can still use it, or do an in-text citation with your paraphrasing, right? So if you, I don't know the teachers in the department apart from Mrs. Brown Chambers, but if you have, say one of your teachers made a comment, or she would have written a book or something for that matter, or said something to you in class, you know, just for example, and we're gonna use your teacher. We're gonna say that your teacher is an historian. We're gonna say something to the effect that Bailey or Cruikshank notes that World War I could have been averted. Just for example, could have been averted because Germany didn't need to whatever. Just for example. So if that's a you paraphrase that, and you would put that in your SBA, and you would make the reference that this is not your words, it didn't come from you, and so you would say Cruikshank, comma, or just put Cruikshank, because if it's not a published document or anything like that, you would just put Cruikshank and leave it there. If it's a published article, you can paraphrase and put the person's name as well as the page number. You do not put the year, no matter what you see, ladies. That's why you want to ensure that you get credible source. You don't put the year, you put the page number. Anything that you see with the year after the author's name, that's APA and possibly Chicago style. Don't quote me on the Chicago, but it's definitely APA citation. And remember, we said that we're looking at MLA citation. All right, so let me go back to my screen. So, so the person who said that I should go over it, was that a little clearer to you?
Yes, miss.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm happy that it is much clearer. So the narrative is when the person, sorry. All right, so the narrative is when it's a statement, it's the person is talking and they would have put in, so King states that, so we tell what King would have said in the actual article in the project. And the parenthetical example is when it's almost like a paraphrase, you know, it's basically just extracting the information and putting it in such a way where you still give credit to the person who would have said it. Now, footnote versus endnote. So the footnotes, ladies, it comes at the end of the page. And very soon I'm going to ask Mrs. Brown Chambers to just give us an example of it. So the footnotes, they are located at the bottom of your page. It is easy to gain information from the footnotes because of where they're located. And it really affects the layout of the page. So what you might find, sorry, is that your information is the page is shorter, right? As opposed to your endnotes, which comes at the very end of your research paper before your reference page. So it will, the endnotes are at the end of the chapter. The reader have to move back and forth to get to the information, right? It does not affect the layout of your page. Very nice and cute at the end of it, right? It doesn't matter. But if you prefer to use endnotes, ladies, go ahead. If you prefer to use the footnotes, go ahead. I definitely do believe that as students of history, you need to use at least two of these. You want to use the in-text citation, definitely. And you want to use either or footnotes either or footnote or endnotes. Definitely want to use either of the two. So you want to definitely use two. And suppose you find that you want to use three, not recommended really, but you can. And it just depends on what you are doing or how you do it, right? And I'm sure your teachers, they will guide you further if you so desire to use three. But if you don't want the headache, and if you want to make life simple but effective, use two. In-text citation, definitely, footnote or the end note. So we're pretty much wrapping up the presentation. Before we really go to the reference page, I want to caution you ladies, do not plagiarize, do not take information, that does not belong to you. Give credit, ladies, where the credit is due. It is needed. And this is what makes us true historians in the making. As young as you are and as old as I am, or think I am, this is what makes us true historians. We make reference to people's work. We don't take things, we don't claim to have things that are not ours. Now, the reference page, we do not say bibliography for a Caribbean history SBA. We don't. We use works cited or reference. And to be honest, I prefer works cited over reference. It doesn't matter though. Works cited or reference. We do not use bibliography. I'm going to ask Mrs. Brown Chambers, in wrapping up, ladies, just to show you some clippings of the footnotes, and I think the end notes and what the works cited ought to look like. I must also add that the works cited ought to be in alphabetical order, and there has to be an indent in the second line, right? So once she starts showing you the information, you will see it, and you can use it as a guide. And as she said to you earlier, ladies, you will be given handouts, or not handouts, well, handouts in electronical form of what is expected of you as you go on. And just before, yeah, I'm gonna allow her to say, I was gonna close off, but before I close off, let me just ask her to just show you the slide for me with the end note and the footnote. All right, so it's can you blow it up a little bit more for me, miss?
Sure,
The
give me a second.
font size, yeah. Right, beautiful. Thank you so much. So, ladies, if you notice, the end note is showing at the end of the paper. So it's like basically after you've culminated, after you've discussed your main points, done your conclusion and everything, all of that end note will be at the end of your page, right? Not at the bottom, but at the end of the body. Then let's put it that way. It will be at the end of the body, just before you go into the reference or the works cited, right? But the foot, and sorry, and if you notice, there are numbers at the beginning of each. So the numbers would indicate the first end note that you put in, the second one, the third one, etc. So when I go through, or when a teacher rather goes through your SBA, she should be able to see, okay, make reference to, okay, number 5, she talk about Eric Williams. Let me see, and the teacher will check. So ladies, we don't deal with the deception and the lies or anything like that. So when your teacher goes in and she checks her Eric Williams book on capitalism and slavery, sorry, tongue twister this morning, and she reads page 53, she should be able to pick up, even if you paraphrase, miss or sir should be able to pick up what you would have put in the body of your paper. Do you have any example of the footnote, miss?
Checking.
Okay. if you could go, well, if you go back to the same one that we had with Pitman, that could be an example that we could use as well.
I mean, I have the document itself. What we don't have in the document is an actual
Example of the footnote at the bottom.
yeah.
I wanted to put one in the presentation this morning. I'm very sorry for this, girls, but I wasn't seeing one that was clear enough for you to follow. So the footnote though, ladies, it will go at the bottom of the page, not the end of the body, but at the bottom of the page. So you would still see the numbers. I wonder if I could do a demonstration. Let me see if I could do a demonstration for you to make it easy.
That's what I was thinking.
All right, so let me, would the whiteboard allow me to do a demonstration? No. All right.
No, not necessarily.
All right, let me, I'm gonna, all right. I'm not able to write. Okay, I think I can write.
All right,
it's
give
okay.
me a second.
I can.
You can?
So I'm gonna try it in the PowerPoint, and it should work. It should work. So let's see. Where is it now? All right, hold on.
No, I think it might be better to try it from
Word.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna come out of this and bring up a Word screen then.
All right, girls. So while Mrs. Brown-Winter looks at that, just something to note, and I put it in the chat, especially for those who jumped on a little bit late, and I know some persons have been making notes as you were instructed earlier this morning. At least two different types of citations are recommended. The in-text citation, and then you choose either between the footnote or the end note. As it says, and as Miss explained earlier, the footnote will come at the end of each page, and the end note will come at the end of the essay itself, at the end of the SBA. It's still, both of them will have numbering so that we can connect the quotation with the actual book or magazine or article that you would have referenced from. And it is also important for you, I think, as young researchers, it might be easier to do the footnote rather than the end note, so that you can keep track of what you have actually done. So while there is the footnote or end note option, I would say as the young researcher to try to stick with the footnote. It shows you it at the end of each page. So for example, Ashley Kidd would know that, okay, so for the two quotations that I have on this page, here are my two references at the bottom of the page, rather than waiting until the end, you know, where she may not have been properly spacing or organizing the things as they come on. So just something for you to consider, and Miss is going to show you a demonstration or a possible demonstration of a footnote so that it will be easier for you as you get going.
All right, so let's get into it. I did one, but I'll just go back and show you. So I'm sure you're seeing my screen. So to do the footnote, ladies, you would go to reference, which is, if you're using Word, I'd have to go back in my head to find out what we do in Google Docs, but I'll double check it for you, don't worry. So if you're using the Word document, at the top of your page, you'll see references. So I have on my screen, the dogs are black. And somebody, for example, would have said the dogs are black. So I want to cite that the dogs are black. What I do, I put my cursor here, if you notice. Let me delete it so you can see what I'm doing. I put my cursor at black, I will press footnote, and you will see the footnote jumps at the bottom of the page, and I will put winter 12, just for example. Now, you can use the footnote to not only give a reference, you can also use the footnote to explain something if you don't want the words to be counted, because your footnote words are not counted. So, suppose I wanted, let me go back at the top. Suppose I wanted to talk about, suppose I wanted to give a definition on chattel slavery. And in the body, I would have put something to the effect like, the planters saw the slaves as their property and treated them as chattel, right? At the bottom now, if you wanted now to explain chattel, or probably I should have put it a different way, the plant, if I wanted to say slavery was, yeah, it can stay chattel, and treated them as chattel, I would put my footnote, put my cursor at chattel, insert footnote, and so you notice it says two, and so you can explain. So you could say something to the effect that slaves, the enslaved population were regarded as chattel, which means property, something like that. I'm not even doing it right. I'm not saying it how I should be saying it, but if you get the gist of what I'm saying, you can explain at the end of your footnote or give a definition what the word is if you don't want it to be counted in terms of word count in. So you put chattel slavery is, that's what I should have put. Sorry, let me just put that. Chattel slavery is. So you put chattel slavery is, and you define what chattel slavery is. If it is that you don't want to put it up here, right? So the footnote, as Mrs. Brown Chambers said, and I do concur, it would be easier and better for you to use the footnotes than the endnotes. But I am not saying do not use the endnotes. I'm not discouraging it. I'm just saying, or we are just saying, it might work better for you so that you don't have to be scrolling down to make sure that the information that you need to insert is where it ought to be. If you do the footnote, it's going to be at the bottom of your page, and you just move on. All right, so that's really what the footnote will give you. And just to wrap up, I like to end with a little inspirational quotation. And even before I read this inspirational quotation from Marcus Garvey, I just want to say, ladies, that always remember that you are resilient. Always remember, ladies, that no one can affect your success but you. And what do I mean by that? If you take a sort of nonchalant approach to this SBA and any other SBA that you have to do, then you can't expect to reap the rewards. So at your fingertip is your success. And I like to tell my students that train yourself to be disciplined. So even when you're not motivated, ladies, be disciplined. Be disciplined to do the necessary work. Be disciplined to do the corrections as they are given by your teacher. Remember that success is not a part-time thing. It is not a part-time thing. At the end of it, ladies, at the end of this juncture, at the end of this journey that you are on for CSEC, you want to amass the best possible grades and grades with distinction. You want to have that feeling, and in order for you to have that feeling, you have to put in. So always remember, ladies, that you are resilient. You can do this SBA. You can get it. You have it. And just finishing in the words of Marcus Garvey, never forget that intelligence rules the world. Ignorance carries the burden. Therefore, remove yourself as far as possible from ignorance and seek as far as possible to be intelligent. When you do your Caribbean History SBA, ladies, you are you are making your path, you're paving your way rather to being very intelligent, to being that individual who understands her past and understands what role her past has in shaping the future, what mistakes were made and what mistakes to avoid. I thank you, ladies, for accommodating me, and I thank you for your attendance and your questions. Right back over to you, Mrs. Brown Chambers.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Before we invite the vote of thanks, I want to open the floor. Well, before I open the floor to the questions, I want to say big up and welcome. Your teachers have been online supporting you, your individual class teachers, so Mr. Hall, Mrs. Banks Kushney, Miss McFarlane. They've been in the session listening, right? Because they know how sometimes, not you girls though, but there are some girls who will say, oh, the presenter never said this. Well, they were here just to make sure that we were all on the same page and agreeing that the value of this SBA, you will never understand it until you come out of the exam and you're like, well, I am happy that I was able to cement or to put in for myself. As Mrs. Brown Winter said, that 79% of everything that you have. So you do need this 21%. It sounds like nothing now. It sounds like absolutely nothing. Some people will be like, boy, the amount of work I'm gonna have to put in for 21%, but it's going to be absolutely worth it. When your names go on that regional placement list and national placements for history, for Caribbean history, you are going to be so proud of yourselves after the effort that you would have put in. So I'm opening the floor for at least another 2 minutes. If you have any questions, any comments about the SBA guideline discussion, and your 2 minutes starts now. I am waiting patiently on you. While I wait on you to decide if you have any questions, remember that you can put it in the chat. Also in chat, you will be seeing an evaluation form for the workshop, and I'm gonna ask you to just go ahead and fill that in. I'm seeing Ashley Allison with her hand raised. Go ahead, Ashley.
Good morning, Miss. I'm not sure if I heard this earlier, but did you guys say the word limit for the SBA?
Okay. I can see Miss just getting that ready for you.
My apologies. I totally forgot to put in. The word count is between 1,000 to 500, 1,500, sorry. But for me, and I am Mrs. Brown Chambers, I don't know if your teachers can open their mics if they have any queries or concern. I usually allow my girls to write. And when I say once it does not go over 1,800 words, I am okay with it. Because really, we find that sometimes the girls, they are not able to effectively express themselves in a true academia way, right? And so I do allow them to write. What I will do though is that if I realize that they are too verbose, if the SBA seems too wordy, then I'll help them to cut it down accordingly. There are some girls who will not give you 1,500 words, much less 1,800. And so I think what Caribbean Council examination, what the Caribbean Examination Council has done is put it within that range, 1,000 to 1,500, to have that little leveling. So, but for me though, a really, really good SBA would give you 1,500 words to about 1,800, very nicely written details and all the necessary information. But from the guideline, it's 1,000 to 1,500 words, I believe.
Right. When I checked, double checked on the syllabus itself, it says 1,000 words. The 1,000 words though does not include
right,
bibliography, doesn't include your quotations, it doesn't include your sources, your charts, your title, your tables, your pictures, your references, or appendices. So generously,
okay,
yeah.
come in after.
Go again, go again.
No, I'm telling you that you could finish. There is something that I didn't say to them as well that I want to just add.
Okay. So that was from the CXC syllabus itself.
So
So
1,000 words.
right, 1,000
All right.
words they are saying, but of course it doesn't include your bibliography, doesn't include your appropriate quotations. And if you're using the format that Mrs. Brown Winter showed you, well, obviously it would not have been counted as a part of your 1,000 words.
Definitely. Ladies, and this is why if you do the in-text citation and you do the indent and the italics, if you do that, that is not counted at all. It's not counted. And so that gives you wiggle room to do. I think I might be mixing it up with sociology because sociology is 1,500 words. So it's 1,000 words for the Caribbean history. But let me just run back to the body very quickly. What I've seen in the past, ladies, is that persons tend to have an appendix at the end of their SBA, but there's no reference of the appendix in the body. Should not be the case. Should not be the case. If you are going to put in a table, a chart, a picture, you know, anything, you're gonna see table 1 in appendix. So you don't put the actual table or chart in the body, but you make a reference to it in the body. And then when your teacher goes at the end of the SBA, he or she should be able to make some correlation between what's at the end and what's in the body. If it's a picture, you see picture 1. So you don't just put see figure and for everything. So if it's a table, see table. If you have 2 tables, so it's see table 1, see table 2 in appendix, and you close off there. So you are making a reference to the table in the paragraph, and you want to show them the table, you put it. So for example, very quickly, if you were looking at immigration schemes, migration schemes, Indian migration schemes in the Caribbean, and you wanted to show a table of how many Indians when they came and the number that came during the years over the time, you would talk about that in the body. But if you wanted to give a visual to your teacher, you would say, see table 1 in appendix. When your teacher goes to the back of your
SBA.
project, she will see appendix and she will see picture one. If table one, sorry, if you have two tables, you would put the other table as a table C, table two. If the next thing you have that you want to show visuals for is a picture, you will put picture one, see picture one. When your teacher goes to the back, it's the same process. She'll see picture and you have to label it just as how you would label it in the body. I totally overlooked that. My apologies. So that's what I wanted to add to it.
All right. So just some key takeaways then. This session is just to literally whet your appetite, whet your foot, whet your hands, whet your brain, everything. I know some people are going to shut down any minute now, but you will shut down with the Caribbean History SBA on your mind so that you can organize yourselves, right? Over the next couple of weeks. I want to at least do the vote of thanks. And then ladies, I'm gonna ask you to stay on for at least another 10 minutes. Let me just finalize some things with us. Ashley, Allison, go ahead again for me, please.
Yes, Miss. Did you guys discuss how are we gonna get the research question? Are there for a group of questions we pick from, or do we?
No, there are a selected group of questions that your teachers and I we would have collated, put together a document. That document will be shared with you through Google Classroom. So before the end of today, you will get those questions so that you can make your selection and start putting together some ideas as to how you will write this SBA. So in Google Classroom, we will have the recording from today's session. We will have the SBA guideline as well as the questions in one folder marked Caribbean History SBA. And then from there or in there, you will find the resources that you will need to tackle the SBA. All right? Great. So it
Thank
means
you,
that
Miss.
some people will need to go back on Google Classroom. We're not closing, nor are we killing the classrooms over the summer break because some persons will need to access them to get this SBA done. Thank you, Miss Allison, for your questions. At this time, would like to invite Miss Harris, near Ashley Harris, to do the vote of thanks to our presenter.
All right. Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Miss Brown Winter. My name is Nia Ashley, and on behalf of the grade 10 history students, I'd like to thank you so much for imparting your valuable knowledge and your insight pertaining to this SBA. For me, it was really in-depth, and I'm sure that the majority of us have a lot more clarity now and less fear moving forward, because you made it seem more like a thrilling investigation rather than tedious work. And
Right.
I'm sure most of us will appreciate that. And also, we're grateful for the encouragement throughout and the quote at the end. It was really uplifting. So again, thank you, and we hope to hear from you in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, ladies, use your reaction quickly before Mrs. Winter goes and just show her your appreciation supporting all of what Nia Ashley just said.
Thank you, girls. Thank you so much. Please enjoy the rest of your day. And as you start your summer vacation, if you have started, try not to party too much, but to put in some work also. Thank you so much, Mrs. Brown Chambers and your team. Thank you so much for inviting me. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
All right, great. All right, ladies, let's just do our final bit of business as it relates to this workshop. So a lot was said this morning as it relates to what you will have to do. The guideline, as I said, will be posted, as well as the recording will be posted on Google Classroom. There are some dates, however, that I want us to be mindful of. So as you are preparing to go off, these are the dates that you should bear in mind. Monday, September 27, for the it's coming up for the first submission of the SBA. Now, what do we mean by the first submission of the SBA? We mean all the parts of the SBA. So from the rationale to the introduction to the body to the reference sheet or the work cited, all of that will be done and submitted at the end of September, God's willing. Then, as I said earlier, the SBA will be marked by your teachers, giving you feedback. And by the first week of December, we will ask you to make that second submission. Please note, I don't use the word drafts. And I said that initially, especially to the girls who might have gotten on a little bit late. There are no such things as drafts for Caribbean history. There is your first submission because your SBA needs to have all the parts in it for us to really see if the SBA is really, making sense or if it is totally off. Then we mark, and by the end of February, God's willing, to submit your completed SBA. So this is all the corrections with your referencing, etc., submitted by the 28th of February 2022. I have placed in chat the link for the evaluation for the workshop. So please, ladies, I'm going to ask you to do that before you leave. And remember to just check the Google Classroom for all the information that would have been discussed in this morning's session so that you can undertake the mission as is. Lastly, last year, the National Library had a session in I think it was about August or somewhere around about there, with the Caribbean history students. I don't know if they will be undertaking that kind of mission, right? So if it is that any new information or any information comes to us as it relates to how we can help our SBA students, please remember, girls, that occasionally check your email, check the WhatsApp group that you may have with your teachers, touch base with a couple of your friends. But more than anything, some people will need to go do some little reading or do some evaluation and looking at the questions. And then after you look at the questions, you make your selection. It's one research you're doing. So it's not 5 questions you need to choose. One, uno, in French, uno in Spanish, 1 question that you'll need to choose, and then you will undertake that research. I posted the link. I hope to see some feedback from you, suggestions as to ways in which we can improve this SBA session, or just your general concerns that you might have had about the SBA. I look forward to hearing from you. And I don't have anything else to say. I'm going to check to see if the teachers, Mrs. Banks-Kushney, Miss McFarlane, anybody has anything they want to say with the students just before we end the session. No, looking good, looking like everybody's on the same page. All right, ladies, bless you so much and thank you for your time. Do have for yourselves a